We cleared out thousands of people, many of whom are here, I know, who we helped to get citizenship and are now full citizens of this country. And we gave permanent protection to over 19,000 people who've been on temporary protection visas here who are now able to sponsor their family and friends. And that's a good thing. There's more help in my home and office. You'll find some of the best food restaurants in Australia, run by Hazaras. The Ramadan night markets, which people would have been at, spilling right over many places in central Dandenong, right down into Harmony Square, is astounding. It's year one, but it's brought all parts of the community together. And Jim and I were there again last night. One of the most beautiful things about that was that it was Muslim Australians, but other Australians, people of all different cultures and faiths coming together in a community event. Too quickly in a religious or an ethnic conflict, how you behave sets the tone for the country, and it really matters. I saw when Peter Dutton and Scott Morrison in 2016 tried to weaken Australia's racial discrimination laws. What that said to the whole community is, well, it's okay to say more racist stuff. And we saw more black Africans abused in Springvale, we saw more women's hijabs ripped off on the bus. So I will never use these ethnic conflicts, because that's not leadership. Leadership is talking calmly and bringing people together, because I've seen what happens when so-called leaders choose to behave a different way.
Next, we are honoured to have the Honourable Julian Hill MP, who will provide an insightful presentation on the Australian Government's approach to the citizenship, multiculturalism and inclusivity. Please welcome Mr. Hill to the stage.
Ramadan Mubarak to everyone, except Jim, I think. It's Eid Mubarak to you today, and Eid Mubarak to everyone else, we think, tomorrow. Just in that little crossover. I was asked to come and share a few words on the invitation about social cohesion, about multiculturalism and integration of people new to Australia. I just want to acknowledge at the outset the beauty and the poignancy in the way that you framed the invitation, talking about resilience and hope in the face of adversity. And particularly here at Royal Banyan Reception in Springvale, because Springvale has been known for many decades to be home for a very large Vietnamese and Cambodian community. And there are two other communities that have come to Australia over the last 40, 50 years, fleeing war, fleeing persecution, but bringing hope and building new lives and contributing to our country. This year, actually, next month, marks the 50th anniversary, 50 years of people from Vietnam coming to Australia. It was an extraordinary act of generosity by Australia at the end of the Vietnam War to open our doors and welcome so many people. And the Prime Minister last month hosted a beautiful reception in Sydney on Kirribilli Harbour for community leaders from all over Australia to mark the occasion. Similarly, people from Cambodia fleeing war and genocide in Cambodia under the Pol Pot regime. And I've said before in a speech, actually, when I was launching Shuja's book a couple of years ago, that the Taliban are, in my view, the world's worst regime since Pol Pot, truly totalitarian, trying to control every aspect of people's lives, not just security, not just the economy, but what people believe and how they think. But it is an incredibly Australian story to come to this country with hope to build a better life. Hazaras have been recognised, of course, for centuries by historians as a distinct cultural group with language, with identity, with cultural practices. And in recent years here in modern multicultural Australia, the local Hazara community has been taking your place, contributing to so many aspects of our national and community life. I want to congratulate again the Federation. I think we mark, is it in May, 1 year? 1 year, Bashir, I spoke here at the launch, and I put a lot of thought into that speech, which I sent you a copy of, but I look forward after the election to participating in the anniversary to look back on what the you've achieved so far. But if you walk through central Dandenong in my home and office, you'll find some of the best food restaurants in Australia, run by Hazaras. The Ramadan night markets, which people would have been at, spilling right over many places in central Dandenong, right down into Harmony Square, is astounding. It's year one, but it's brought all parts of the community together, and Jim and I were there again last night. One of the most beautiful things about that was that it was Muslim Australians, but other Australians, people of all different cultures and faiths coming together in a community event. But there is a complex historical trauma with persecution or exclusion of Hazaras in many parts of Afghanistan at different times for over a century. Discrimination against so many people continues today under the Taliban, including against ethnic minorities, supporters of the former government, and all women and girls. I just want to read to you an email which I read at one of the rallies in Harmony Square, I think back around 2021. It's an email that I received. I'll quote it. "We are Hazara and Shiite people of Afghanistan, and we are in a very bad situation. I lost my father a few months ago, and I'm worried about the rest of my family. I used to work with the police, and I've been threatened by the Taliban since the fall of Kabul, and now we try to hide. They have killed and will kill our people for years. The Taliban have also issued an official written statement that widows and young girls should be forced to marry the Taliban, and young boys should go to war with the Taliban. I'm worried about my 3 young sisters and my widowed mother, and I'm worried about myself and my brother. My fiancé is in Australia and I've been sponsored for a visa, but there's no response. Please help us process our visa and save our lives. The Taliban will kill us." Last week, more than 100 Hazara and Shiite students were killed and injured in western Kabul near our house. To whom should we take refuge? Who should we ask for help? How do we breathe? How do we survive? They kill us every day just for being Hazaras and Shiites. And it's one of the things that I'm most proud of since we came to government, that person did get a visa to come to Australia because the Labor government cleared out the blatant discrimination that the Liberals had against people from Afghanistan in the visa system. We cleared out thousands of people's partner visas that have been waiting for more than 5 years. We cleared out thousands of people, many of whom are here I know, who we helped to get citizenship and are now full citizens of this country. And we gave permanent protection to over 19,000 people who've been on temporary protection visas here who are now able to sponsor their family and friends. And that's a good thing. There's more to do. But I found that email when I was thinking about what I'd say. There's no single truth, of course, on these issues. People will have different views and perspectives, and we need to be able to talk about these as Australians. But I am very confident that the vast majority of Australians come to this country wanting to live in freedom, wanting to live in peace, and don't want to replicate foreign conflicts, be they ethnic conflicts, religious conflicts here. Well, I said actually this year in the launch, remember we talked about how Australia has dealt with these issues successfully for decades. I used the examples of the Greeks and the Turks, or the Sinhalese and the Tamil, or ethnic conflicts from Ethiopia and other places. But people do want to live in freedom of success, and how we talk about and resolve these issues. The process really matters. I know that from 30 years of community life. How you resolve these issues really, really matters. Australian multiculturalism is something we can be proud of, and I believe the promise when you come to this country, in a multicultural country, is the promise of a fair go. That you get a fair go at life here, however long you've been here, whether you wear the hijab or not, whatever your faith, whatever your ethnicity. And we don't always live up to that promise. We do well in many respects, but we don't always live up to that promise. And I won't dwell on it today, but the scourge of Islamophobia, for example. Women who choose to wear the hijab going about their business. That's a stain on our society. And I won't talk today because I don't have time, but there are many things the government is actively doing. But I just want to give you an analogy, and I borrowed this from Tony Burke, who talks about this a lot, the Minister for Home Affairs and Immigration. One phrase you often hear people say about Australian multiculturalism is that we're a melting pot, that we're like a whole bunch of ingredients going into a big pot of soup and stir it up. Tony has preferred for many years the analogy though of a salad. Because in a well-made salad, you have ingredients which retain their flavour and their identity, and you can understand what they are and where they came from. They're not all kind of mushed into the soup like my mum used to make when I was sick. They're a salad. But the magic in the salad is how the ingredients all relate to each other and what binds them together. And I think that's a good analogy, because when you come to this country, no one expects you to leave your culture at the door. Integration doesn't mean you become the same as everyone else. And we're a better country when you pass on your language and pass on traditions to your children as they navigate those two identities as Australians and as proud Hezare Australians. We can do that. So people can come from all over the world. We recently strengthened our laws against racist hate speech in Canberra, actually. Success also takes investments. To help new people settle in, we run a generous humanitarian program where we support people properly. We'll have more to say during the campaign about some exciting investments and announcements in our part of Melbourne and across the country. But the most important ingredient to success is leadership. It's political leadership because the tone you use, the words you use, if you choose to take a side too quickly in a religious or an ethnic conflict, how you behave sets the tone for the country, and it really matters. I saw when Peter Dutton and Scott Morrison in 2016 tried to weaken Australia's racial discrimination laws. What that said to the whole community is, well, it's okay to say more racist stuff. And we saw more black Africans abused in Springvale, we saw more women Sejabs ripped off on the bus. So I'll never use these ethnic conflicts, because that's not leadership. Leadership is talking calmly and bringing people together, because I've seen what happens when so-called leaders choose to behave a different way. The second ingredient, as I say, in the last part of leadership, it's political leadership, it's faith leadership, it's bringing people of different faiths together. We're a multi-faith, multilingual, multiracial country, but it's community leadership. And I know when I look across this room, I see so many different community leaders here. We all have leadership in our own sphere, but how we choose to exercise that as leaders really matters. So I'll finish on this point. It's a question that I sometimes get. What is an Australian? An Australian to me, it's a very simple answer. It's necessary, it's not everything. But Australian to me is anyone who's committed to this country and the principle of mutual respect to their fellow Australians, who may be very, very different. They may have very different views on the world. But the example I know, and I've heard this from many leaders who've come quietly to talk to me about issues over the last few weeks and months, the example that we choose to set as leaders to young people really, really matters. So I encourage everyone to come together in that spirit of unity. When we do have differences, to sit down and talk about them, to find a way to make sure that there's a broad consensus and that everyone can have a place in Australia and feel valued. So thank you for the work that you do. We can't take our society for granted. When you look around the world, when you look at what's happening in other countries, we've always got to fight each generation for those basic rights of equality and to live in freedom and dignity. Thank you very much.